Welcome to The Point of View. This is your favorite current affairs show on television. My name is Bernard Avle. On The Point of View, we get the right guests. We ask them the relevant questions on issues that matter to you. And for the past few weeks, we've been focused on one issue, the biggest story in the globe. Now, the biggest global issue since World War II is on our hands. And we've been trying to bring you some very informed people to explain the phenomenon, to let us know the reality of the situation and give us a sense of where we're headed. I have a very big panel today to delve into what a lot of people expect to be a spike in the numbers of those with COVID-19. But if you want to contribute to the show, you can send us a WhatsApp on the number on the screen. If you're watching on Facebook or Twitter, there's also a stream you can comment on. When we come back, I'll tell you who my guests are. Stay with us. Good. So before I start, I will just do a bit of a demonstration of how to sanitize. I'm told that there's a way of doing it where you have to get the, because the germs hide here, right? And then, of course, the inside the finger. So yes. Now, if you're doing it with running water and soap, it has to be at least 20 seconds. And this has to be done religiously. And, of course, avoid touching your face. And also, don't stay too close to people. We've tried to maintain the social distancing protocol. I have three guests. I have a doctor at the front lines. She's a residency person, as in they are the doctors in residency. So they run hospitals. They are below the specialists, but they are higher than everybody else. And my guest, Dr. Florence Ekumia. Doc, welcome to the show. I also have my public health lead on City. We've had him a few times. He was here last week. He is a lecturer or a professor in public health, and he's also a health economist in New York University, Nana Kofi Kwache, MPH. Great to have you.
Thanks for having me.
Great. I also have a member of parliament who's, his titles are many. Let me just read the thing so you know. He has, they call it MBCHB. That's what you also have, right? MBCHB. He also has BSc Human Biology, which most of you have as well. He has an MPH and he has an MBA, all from KNUST. He's in the person of Honorable Dr. Kwabena Unyama. He is MP for Brekum East and Chairman of Parliament's Health Committee. Great to have you, Doc.
Thank you for having me, and good evening to your viewers.
Brilliant stuff. So we're going to give you three dimensions of this. We're going to first look at the numbers and explain what's happened. The last time we did this show, the number of infections was 25-ish, 26, 25. Today, it's 68. And Nana will explain this. Then we'll find out from the doctors on the front line how they're coping and how they are preparing for what is clearly going to be a surge in number of people coming to them. And then we'll talk to Parliament about how much money are you making available for all of these hardworking people. So that's the plan. So now, look on your right. Look on the graph. Now, 11th March, there was no case in Ghana. 11th March is 2 weeks ago, exactly 2 weeks ago, 14 days ago. So if somebody came into Ghana on 11th March and the person did a self-quarantine, today will be the day they will go home.
Yes.
That day, there was no case in Ghana. 12th March, there was 2 cases, right? 12th March, 2 cases. Then you have 13th March, 4 cases. I'm moving on the graph. 14th March, 6 cases. That stayed the same to 15th March. It flattened. 16th March, 6 cases. So between day 0 and day 6 cases. So 1 a day on average. 17th March, 7 cases. It's still 1 a day. 18th March, 9 cases. Not too bad. 19th March, 11 cases. A jump of +2. 20th March, +5. 16 cases. It's getting interesting. 21st March, 21 cases. That's +6. 22nd March, 24 cases. Now, 21st March was Saturday, the night the president announced the final closure of airports. And he said that anybody who came into Ghana that night into Sunday evening should be quarantined and tested. So take note of 21st March, 20 cases. 22nd March, 24 cases. These guys are now getting places to sleep. They haven't been tested yet. 23rd March, 27 cases. So this growth is still very normal, right? Then 24th March, 53. Woo, what's going on? And then 25th March, 68. Now, people think this is crazy. We are getting into the geometric part of the graph. What does this mean? Let's start with Nana. What are these numbers telling us?
Well, I think it's important to separate out two issues here. There is what's going on in the general population, and there's what's going on with the people currently under quarantine.
Okay.
Until 23rd March, what we're seeing was a growth in the numbers in the general population. The additional jump we saw from 27 to 58 to those 31 new positive cases, that happened with people in quarantine.
Okay.
So they are contained. The ability to spread it further is limited because the issue in the growth curve is people's contacts. That's the real question here. In the group that is quarantined, though, the fact that they arrived basically in one evening, most of them all of them are quarantined and tested, and we're getting these kind of results, it does raise some questions about the days before and the weeks before. It would be wishful thinking to assume that in all that time, nobody else who came in was positive. It would be wishful thinking to assume that those people who came in and might have been positive have not had contacts. And it would be wishful thinking that those people had not then also had contacts beyond that. So we have that issue in terms of arrivals, in terms of our importation of cases. Our current testing strategy really focuses heavily on case identification. So for a lot of these people who might be asymptomatic carriers, who might have been around long enough where they're not just showing symptoms, they are still infectious, still possibly passing it on.
So you're saying that until the 1,030 people in quarantine came, we were testing based on symptoms. We're not testing on the basis of whether you had met somebody. It was purely because of symptoms.
If you were a known contact or somebody who was positive and they could trace you down in our contact tracing protocol, yes, you were tested as part of your quarantine protocol. But if you were somebody who didn't have, even if you were a recent arrival, you were just doing basically self-quarantine. But we've already had anecdotal evidence about how that has not exactly been followed strictly. So we know that just from the numbers we're seeing from that small group, that there's likely other chains of transmission going on.
So you are saying two things. You are saying that while we shouldn't be alarmed at the jump from 25 to 68 in 2 days, we should be concerned that we hadn't done the quarantine earlier.
The nature of our testing protocol means that we're identifying people who are showing with symptoms.
Yes.
This condition is one where about 80% of people have mild to moderate symptoms. A lot of people are asymptomatic carriers. Iceland did a mass testing protocol where they found that 50% of all positive cases were actually asymptomatic. So if you have asymptomatic carriers who never feel sick, go through a quarantine protocol, maybe don't even follow it, the risk of them passing it on is a real risk. That's what I'm saying. That's
what you're saying. Now, I want you to show me the graph again. This time, show me what was on the left side. The quarantine results, because on the quarantine results, you had 1,030 people under quarantine. They came in on 21st. I'm told, I spoke to one of them today, he says they got to their rooms by 2 a.m. the next day. So it was quite a crazy night. 863 samples have been taken. And today is Wednesday the 25th. So between the 22nd and 25th, they haven't taken samples for all of them. That should tell you something. Of the samples taken, 529 are ready. The results are ready, 529, right? The number of positive cases, 38. So if you do 38 out of 529, you're doing easily a 4.4 percentage.
Yes.
What do these numbers on the left tell us about the guys who were quarantined?
Well, most of these arrivals are, we know that Europe right now is a high-risk area. We know that London, the United Kingdom has a problem, France has a problem, Italy has a problem. There's nowhere in Europe or Middle East or Asia that is not problematic at this moment. All these arrivals from there were always going to be high-risk arrivals. The fact that we're detecting about a 4% rate of positives in that group is the real concern that we have retrospectively prior to that point. because this is a random sample of people. It's a large enough group that you can assume that this is relatively a steady state question. And if you extrapolate that backwards to the days and weeks since we've had our first cases here, and factor in the reality that every 3 days you can expect the number of those infections that are untracked, unmonitored to double, we are not probably picking up in the testing protocols the true numbers on the ground.
Are you concerned that in 4 days we've not been able to test 1,030 people and that we are still yet to collect samples of 167 as I speak to you?
Accurate, speedy testing is the game here. We have to be able to detect these things early so we can begin isolation protocols if we need to. That's a question of our testing throughput. The machines we have at KCC are in Noguchi. If they are limited in their throughput, it doesn't matter how many test kits we have, because we have to make sure that we can process the samples we are collecting. What we're seeing right now appears to be a case where our daily testing capacity is limited to under 1,000. For a population of 31 million, that's not going to be enough, if especially we're not picking up many asymptomatic cases or cases that have not been actually picked up in the positive testing yet.
What would have happened had the president said what he said on the 21st a week before? So on the 21st, he said, anybody coming into Ghana from anywhere, you will be quarantined and tested. If the president had said this 7 days earlier and had blocked our borders as he did on the 21st, and he had done it 7 days before, how significant would that have been in seeing the number? Would we have had more people? Would that have been... Just comment on that.
Well, it's difficult to put a number on it. There's no way to say exactly whether or not the number of isolated people have tested the same. But we would definitely have had fewer people slipping through. One of the challenges I think we had at the airport prior to this closure was the fact that the way the protocol was being handled was flawed in some ways. Yes, we had the screening form, but a lot of the follow-up seems to have been retrospective rather than in the moment. That meant that you had to rely on the information people gave you at the time they were entering. If that wasn't accurate, if it wasn't complete, it was very difficult to track them, even if you found positive cases on the flight. So in the situation where we have, in this example, for the arrivals on the 24th, I believe, 23rd?
They came on the 21st, Saturday.
Yes. So where we have 4% positives in that case, we can just assume that we would have had 4% cases times those fewer days, and it would have saved us a few more lines of transmission.
But it's also important to remember that the 4% of the 1,030 would definitely be much higher than the percentage of the overall population infected.
Of course.
So this 4% gives us the best chance of seeing the most infected people.
They're coming from areas where it's endemic and widespread right now, so you can expect that you're going to pick it up at a higher rate than you would in the normal population. But the issue is about the number of people who have come in prior positive in the window before we actually close the border officially. If those people happen to even be at a 2% rate, if it was 20 people, 3 days from then it would be 40. If it was 3 days from that time, it would be 80. 3 days from that time, it would be 160. Because this virus has a doubling function. That's why we call it an exponential curve. So not being able to identify accurately or make sure you're preventing all the importations is always going to put you in a position where you're playing catch-up.
Okay. My final question for this round for you before I bring Doctor. I'm doing assumptions here, and if I'm not making sense, both of you help me. So on the day of the 21st, we had 1,030 people coming in. Now, that day, you already had reduced the number of flights coming in because you already banned flights from many countries. So I'm assuming that the 1,000 people is about half of the normal people who come to Ghana on a normal day before that week. Now, my analysis starts from the 11th of March, which was the day where we had 0 cases. Now, 11th of March to 21st March is like 10 days, right? So if you have 2,000 people per 10 days, that's 20,000 people coming in. If you use, so the 1,030 is 4%. Let's be generous. Let's say even 2% of the 20,000 people will test positive. It is reasonable to assume that the number of people who have COVID-19 in Ghana, 2% of 20,000 people, an educated guess, that would be at least 500 people.
That's a fair guess. That's fair logical assumptions based on what we picked up on the arrivals on the 21st and the time frame and the general travel patterns for the time preceding that. That's why I mean that actually is a real area of focus and a real area of concern. Because if many of those people would in a normal day would have made it through customs, would have been able to go home, you're talking about exposure of immigration officials, transportation people, their families, their friends, people that I've networked with in the period to then. And especially because of the doubling function, because every 3 days we deal with a double the number we have on the ground. That's what we're seeing in Italy, that's what we're seeing in France. That's the question. It's not just a question of the number you have coming through or making it through without getting stopped. Mm-hmm. It's the doubling function, which puts us in a really critical race against time now.
Wow. So, viewers, don't be too alarmed. This is just me sitting here calculating. So I'm assuming that at least 500 people had come in. But of course, this has to be proved and tested. And based on what he's saying, if those 500 people have not been traced and quarantined, and they give at least 2 people every day, it's fair to assume that at least 1,000 people have it, in addition to those who have been found. I'm not trying to scare you, but Doc, you work in Kolebu. You are from the Association of Doctors in Residency. Are you guys also looking at these numbers? And if you are, what is the discussion among doctors?
Okay, so the truth is that there's the high risk of community spread, mm-hmm. and we are going to see patients who are coming in with non-specific symptoms. And for hitherto, we have essentially been triaging, asking certain questions. And we have realized that even some of the cases that have been tested positive, some of them have no history of contact. So the case definitions we are working with are being tweaked as and when issues come up. So there's a high chance that we are going to see patients who do not meet the case definition as per se. And you're going to treat them like you would treat a regular patient. And that would expose you to getting infected. And once you are infected, it exposes other patients you see and the community also. So this is an issue we are having to deal with as doctors. And that is why we are pushing that we get the protective equipment, personal protective equipment we need, so that we can use it for everybody we see and decrease the risk of being infected and thereby transmitting.
So you're saying that as you go to hospital tomorrow morning, you are working with the assumption that there are parts of the population who have it but don't know?
Yes.
So does it mean you wear a face mask when you go to the hospital?
Yes. So currently we have been provided with some face masks we use, but there are different levels of personal protective equipment we call PPEs. So what you necessarily would need to treat someone who has tested positive may not be what you would need to treat anybody who is just in the population. But for precaution's sake, we are advocating that as much as possible you use the personal protective equipment with every patient you see to decrease your chance of getting infected.
Are your colleagues afraid to go to work?
Definitely, survival instincts. You may panic because you do not know who has it, and you are going to be responsible to treat people who are symptoms that fit in with, because fever, rhinorrhea, which is runny nose, body pains, that's a common complaints people come in with. So are you going to panic with every patient you see? So people are worried and anxious, and survival instincts, maybe you would want to even say, oh, I'm not going to go to work. But we have been called to service, and our calling has to do with sacrifice, but it's not a suicidal call.
Is there anything in your training that prepares you to work in a high-risk environment without the right tools?
No. Nowhere in our training are you asked to work without the right tools. It's actually a prerequisite that's for whatever situation you use the appropriate tools to help you and protect you. Actually, most of the protocols for emergencies, you actually have to ensure that the environment is safe before you venture into it, because your life is equally important. So that's it. You have to make sure that you have the right protective equipment. And
give my viewers an idea of what the right protective equipment would be in an ideal world. There's no problem. Nothing is short. For your specialist, you are specialist in internal medicine. So you are Kolebu.
In training.
You will get it soon. What are some of the things you need as PPEs to make you comfortable to do whatever you have to do in this season?
So on a regular day, I would be in the consulting room or in the ward examining the patients. Wherever there's a risk of exposure to body fluids or anything that, such as a contaminant, I may be required to use examination gloves, depending on the parts of the body, I may actually need sterile gloves to examine the patient. So these equipment, accessories, they protect both the doctor and the patient. So yes, so I may have to use examination.
So sterile gloves. What else? Gloves which will be sterile or normal.
Yeah. You need a face mask sometimes.
And they are in levels?
Yes, they are in levels. We have the surgical face mask. We have the N95 respirator. And then we have others that are higher.
Which would have been ideal in this. So let's assume you wanted to go to a room where there was an isolated patient with COVID-19. The patient is 95 years old and is coughing uncontrollably. What would you need before you enter that room?
I would want to have an N95.
An N95?
Yes, please.
That one covers your whole face?
Doesn't cover your whole face, but then the droplets are not able to penetrate. Yes, please.
And it lasts longer than 15 minutes?
Yes.
You can use it for how long?
Actually, you have maximum about 5 users with it. It's not as disposable as the surgical mask.
So you need that, and then you would need gloves. Would you need to wear protective clothing like they wore for Ebola?
Definitely. If this is a positive case in an isolation ward, I would need to have my protective. Even if it is maybe a suspected case, we are pending investigations. We have some gowns, disposable gowns, that you can use so that you do not contaminate your personal clothing.
So as I'm talking to you now, if tomorrow morning there's a patient in isolation based on COVID-19 and they bring the patient to your hospital, you don't have what it takes to see them.
Okay, so if the person has tested positive, it's likely the person will be sent to one of the isolation centers.
Okay.
And I think the efforts have been made to at least
equip those places.
Okay. Yes. But then if that person should walk into any other facility not earmarked, then there may be challenges with having those equipment readily available.
But you agree that somebody can be brought and the person will have it and you would not know?
Definitely. And that's
so you could be exposed to the person?
Yes.
Good. You've launched the PPE campaign. I'll come to you. But let me come to Doc. You are wearing 3 hats. You are a doctor. Then you are a parliamentarian. And then you're also a public health specialist because you did public health. You studied all at Tech. So let me start with the doctor issue. Then I'll come to politics because you need to tell us, you did a bit of public health. How serious a situation are we in as a country? As a doctor in parliament who sees all the things we see, as a public health doctor, how concerned are you?
Yes, to the extent that with the cases that we are getting now, it's clear that we've started getting local infections, community spread, and the fact that even countries with well-equipped, health infrastructure are really under pressure because of the sporadic cases. Obviously, there is always a cause to worry because I don't think that, Ghana as a country, we can be well adequately prepared to treat these multiplying cases. And once you start getting the community spread, the chances that the case will exponentially spread is there. Looking at the graph, it shows that we are having increased in the cases. So definitely there's always a bit of a bother to the extent that if we are unable to adequately implement some of the preventive measures and the cases keep rising, we will get to a stage where we will be overwhelmed by the numbers. There are limitations in almost everything that we are working with. Human resource, the equipment, doctor just made mention of. No matter how prepared the state is, obvious when the numbers keep rising, we will get to a stage where we will not be able to contain it. The hope was to limit the community spread as much as possible. But looking at what is happening, it looks like there's still
we missed the boat.
Yes.
On we implemented the travel restrictions a little too late.
Well, there's always a bit of a dilemma because you are always caught between when to implement what strategy. And most of the things you are scaling up with most of the strategy, you consider other factors, where to start, when to start. And once on a hindsight, for an outbreak situation, once you've gotten to a particular stage, you always look at hindsight and think that maybe I should have taken a particular step a day or two earlier. and you always have these issues. But I still think that it's a fluid situation, so there's still room for improvement. But
as a doctor
we need to work very hard.
Who heads the health committee? So far, Parliament has done two things related to this. I know some money issues have come up. You have to approve monies. And then I know you've passed some laws to give the president the power to do what he's done.
Yes.
But do you have any access to the team working on this response? Because you head Parliament Health Committee.
Yes.
Is Parliament Health Committee involved in any way at all? Or you guys just do oversight, you approve budgets, you pass laws, and then you let the executive do the work because you are not a minister?
Yes, I think when the outbreak escalated, the Speaker directed the Health Committee to be oversighting the executive on behalf of Parliament. So as part of the arrangement, we are getting weekly briefings from the minister and the team working. So we met them last week, Wednesday. We are meeting them either tomorrow or Friday for this week's briefing. So I think on Wednesday when we met them, the focus was on the strategies vis-a-vis the $100 million US promised by the president, how they were going to utilize those monies. And we realized that most of the things they told us were still in the, should I say, initial stages.
In the works?
Yes. So a lot of the things were yet to be done. Very few had been done as of the time we met them.
The last time you met them was last week? A week ago today?
Yeah, a week ago today.
Wow. So when are you meeting them next?
Most likely tomorrow or Friday, one of them.
Do you have any questions for them?
Yes, we want to find out where they've gotten to from the last time we met, because there were issues about PPEs. We were promised that some of them they've procured some and they were on their way coming. We want to find out where they are. The issue of treatment centers, decentralizing it into the hinterlands. The promise was to get the regions into getting treatment centers so that they will not put all of them in Accra, Tema, and then Kumasi. And then possibly also expanding the testing areas. We were promised that they will include a center in Ho, UHAS, with support from Noguchi. We want to find out where they have gotten to with that preparation. Just like Prof indicated, at a certain we need to increase the number of testing that we are doing. So we need to have other areas where we can do the testing. So these are some of the things we need to find out where they are. Then obviously with this quarantine and other issues, where they are getting to as far as testing most of these suspected cases are concerned.
This is the point of view. We are trying to gauge our readiness for what our mathematical models are predicting would be a spike in cases. When we come back, we'll ask what has Jack Ma brought and how is that going to affect our preparation? Is Jack Ma's parcel enough to help us get ready? We'll also look at some of your comments and look at the very vexed question of a lockdown. This is the point of view. Don't go away.
Travel the country in just 30 minutes on the U-Tour bus.
I'm just coming from the home or from the palace of the new Yana.
This is our story being told.
Journeys to explore.
From the plains to the greens to the scenery to everything.
There's so much we need to do, to boost tourism around this area. That guy was just getting up.
Learn and indulge in the culture and lifestyle of the people. U-Tour shows on City TV every Saturday at 1 p.m.
There are those with untold stories, unraveled feats, life-changing stories, and lasting legacies. They tell their stories themselves right here on Footprints.
So we go to someone who were put in our various cells, and then someone you have it's a huge prison. And then it was then that it dawned on me that I was really in big trouble.
Do you think that the overthrow of Liman was justified?
I think that with hindsight, there was no justification.
Be inspired by their hard work and resilience that led to those outstanding achievements as we trace their footsteps through the capsule of time.
Because of my upbringing, my mother, my father, they are, Christianity.
Yeah.
So because of that,
strong hands at home.
Even though I'm the guy smoking, doing all kinds of that, I've never tried.
You've never tried?
No, never tried weed or anything.
You've never tried weed?
Even drinking, alcohol, no.
Why should you people put everything, Kwame. Everything was done before Nkrumah arrived in the country.
No, aho ni leba ye.
Aho leba ye.
So join me, Samuel Atamensa, and my guests every Saturday at 9 a.m. and Sundays at 4 p.m. only on City TV.
Footprint is sponsored by Bethel Logistics Company Limited, experts in shipping logistics.
Welcome back to The Point of View. Tonight we're gauging our readiness for what I don't want to say is certainly going to be a spike. Let me show you the global situation with COVID-19. We're all depending on the Johns Hopkins dashboard, Johns Hopkins University, Baltimore, USA. So if you look at the red dot tells you the size of the problem, and the bigger the circle, the larger the number of cases. Now, if you place the cursor on Ghana and you click it, Ghana has 68 confirmed cases, 3 deaths. Nobody has recovered yet. Because, mind you, the disease takes at least 2 weeks to go its life. So it's not such a strange thing that nobody's recovered, they will recover. We have 65 active cases. When we started in February, a lot of the circles were on your right. If you move towards China, Hubei province was massive. In fact, the number of cases, China still has 81,661, the leading number of cases. Italy has phenomenally moved. Indeed, 3 weeks ago, Italy had fewer cases than Ghana. Now, Italy has 74,386 cases, 7,503 deaths. So Italy is really outpacing everybody. People have explained the Italy problem already. You notice that Africa doesn't have such a big problem. Some people say it's because we're not testing enough. Some people say it's because we are not as connected to the global economy enough. People don't move here as they move to other parts of the world. In the western part of your map, North America, New York is now the epicenter. Although there are other parts of the U.S., for example, Louisiana has the fastest growing infection rate. Louisiana is in the south. The U.S. map is very jumbled. So this is just to give you a sense of the globality of this issue. Now, let me talk to you about Jack Ma. So, Jack Ma has done us some good. He's brought the goodies to Africa. And in Ghana, we are told our package includes 20,000 test kits, a lot of face masks, and some protective clothing. I don't know if the story is up. I'll show it to you if it's ready. Yeah. So Jack Ma, Ghana takes delivery of Jack Ma's medical supplies. I'm just finding the story. I'll read it for you. Yeah, there it is. Ghana has taken delivery of its share of medical supplies, including personal protective equipment, donated to African countries by businessman Jack Ma and his Alibaba Foundation to help fight coronavirus. The Minister of Health, Kukwai Jimamenu, received the items at Kotoka on Wednesday, which is today, said they will be distributed to the relevant health facilities. So there you have it, lots of boxes. We have started receiving items that we ourselves have procured. There are some we have ordered that will be delivered by close of the week. Nyama, maybe that's talking to you.
Yes.
We expect that apart from these items, we will take into inventory close to 30,000 PPEs, several quantities of masks, and even sanitizers. We have registered close to 18 Ghanaian companies who are producing them locally. We are now properly prepared. He said sanitizers have been produced by Kasapreko. They won't do akpeteshie for now. It's all sanitizers now. Deputy Chief of Mission Chinese Embassy Zhu Yang said China will continue to provide support to Ghana to continue the spread of coronavirus disease. He also revealed that Chinese companies in Ghana will soon extend a hand of support to Ghana to fight coronavirus. And then he said a few things. Please scroll up. Meanwhile, come down, you are going too fast. Meanwhile, Zahra Beatty, a senior project manager of the Jack Ma Foundation, says the foundation will continue to support government to fight the pandemic. Right, so 30,000 masks, a lot of PPEs, some of them we ordered ourselves. We are playing our part to support the people in the world. We believe COVID-19, blah, 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 blah. Fine. So we saw the Ethiopian Prime Minister tweet that the things have come. They have come indeed. We are told 20,000 test kits. Yeah. In terms of strategy, you're saying testing is now the main issue.
If we're going to prevent the worst case scenario where we pick up on what's really going on when it's hitting the healthcare system, we have to have a means of at least testing, identifying, and quarantining people who are actually positive. Our contact tracing has to be superb now. We can't afford to make any more mistakes. But even with the testing, like I said earlier, having the test kits is not the full picture. If we are limited in our daily processing capacity, the speed at which we are going to know the things we need to know is just not going to be able to allow us to keep our pace with reality. We are dealing here with a situation where the size of your problem gets bigger every 3 days. So it's not just a question of getting the test kits. We have to be investing in our national labs. We have to be upgrading the ones that we have here to level 3 or level 4 status so they can actually deal with the throughput that they're faced with. Because if we're not able to be processing more than 1,000 test kits per day, even if we have 100,000, it's not going to change how many tests we can do per day. The question is the throughput. We have to have the kits, yes, but the throughput also has to be enough to meet it. Okay.
Wow. So test kits don't solve the problem if the capacity of the lab is not upgraded.
That's exactly it.
Wow. So we are still back at square one, essentially.
Right now, what is required is a very speedy, aggressive investment in expanding our lab capacity. If we're not able to do that, then the test kits, they will help. Yes, we'll be able to get samples. But if we can't process the samples, process the data, understand what it's telling us, then we are still going to be behind the pace. The labs are really an important feature here. I believe that's why Noguchi themselves asked a couple of days ago that we consider a lockdown nationally, because they understand that they are limited in what they can do, even if we have 2 million test kits. And if we don't solve the issue of the throughput, then we're not going to actually be successful.
Okay, quick point. So Noguchi, a Noguchi professor was interviewed, who expressed his personal opinion that we need a lockdown. When Professor Ampofo was interviewed, he says Noguchi's position has been communicated to government, and that did not recommend an immediate lockdown. So he distinguishes that. Be that as it may, I have a story for you. Medical Association, GMA, declare nationwide lockdown now. So I can say your parent association, let me read the story and I'll ask you. The Ghana Medical Association is calling on the government to declare a nationwide lockdown with immediate effect. GMA, however, said the lockdown should exempt essential service providers. Here's a quote. The GMA, fully conscious of the threat posed by this pandemic, the disturbing trend of community spread, and the obvious inadequate capacity of the nation's health system to deal with the increased numbers of COVID-19 infections, especially in the severe to critical cases, calls on His Excellency the President to declare a nationwide lockdown with the exception of essential services with immediate effect. You are not an executive of GMA, but can you understand why they are calling for this?
I can definitely understand why anybody will call for a lockdown, especially a health personnel. They are considering the capacity of the health service providers to manage or actually contain the situation if given the exponential rise in the number of cases. So we have about 5,895 doctors registered with the Medical and Dental Council, serving a population of 31 million people. With all the projections from other countries, if we get 1,000 cases, if we are recording more than 500 cases in a day, there's really a limit in the number of doctors who can care for these patients. Bear in mind that these doctors also, if they do not get adequate rest are also becoming immunosuppressed and increase their risk of being infected. So it is an alarming situation. The goal is to contain the situation, and if a lockdown is going to allow for us to contain the situation, then it is well in play.
So it means the GMA probably have looked at our test capacity. They've looked at the numbers you've discussed, and they've concluded that you need to escalate your response beyond testing. Because don't forget, there was close your border, test, social distance, lockdown. And in your scenario, lockdown was the extreme. So it suggests the GMA have realized that even your proposal of racked up tests would not be ready as quickly enough to prevent the worst case. So they've already moved to worst case.
I think that's them looking at the throughput question and understanding that that means that if we are not going to be able to do testing at a large enough scale and quick enough, we're not going to do the contact tracing effectively enough. And that's going to mean that the main place where we're going to be seeing all this happening, where things are actually going to be very difficult, is going to be in the healthcare sector, in the emergency rooms, in the ICUs, which already have very limited capacity to deal, like she said, with the most severe cases, how much less the critical cases. We know, for example, that typically for a population of 400,000, you need about 20 ventilators when nothing is going on. In the coronavirus setting, for 400,000 people, you need about 800 ventilators. We probably don't have more than 50 around the country.
We don't have more than 50 ventilators
around the country. And with that, in that situation, we are going to be limited in our ability to deal with the most critical cases if we get to that point.
We have 5,800 doctors in Ghana. 2 of them are sitting here. We have not more than 50 ventilators. Do you know how many beds we have in Ghana?
I can't give a fair idea.
You don't have the figure. Wow. Based on the calculations you did last time, at what number of infection would our health system get overwhelmed?
Well, the WHO recommends that for every 100 cases of local, or a cluster of 100 local transmissions, you need 28 physicians. Let's just use the physicians number there. Mm-hmm. If you're talking about 5,000 to 6,000 physicians, if you do the math there for where we really would be in trouble, we're talking somewhere between 15 and 18,000 cases.
Wow. Cases?
Cases. We're not talking about people. We're not talking even about the critical situations. We're just talking about
15 to 18,000 cases. Okay. France has 25,000 cases. Switzerland has 10,000 cases. So between France and Switzerland, that's where our health system collapses.
Most likely. And the reality, again, is that this is not a gradual process. You get there faster and faster every day.
Wow.
So we have to make the decisions as soon as possible, and we have to put in place the necessary mitigation strategies that make it so that the consequences economically, socially, are not devastating the way that they can be.
Based on information we have, Dr. Nuama, when the health minister comes tomorrow to your committee, based on Jacoma test kits, 30,000 PPEs, how is that going to change what you're going to ask him? And I'm sure Parliament has an opinion about what should be done. Are you going to suggest something to him? Are you going to tell him certain things as a committee? Or are you just going to ask him to tell you what he's doing and you let him go home?
Oh, obviously, we're going to engage because we also have people who are a bit knowledgeable about what is happening. But I still think that where we are, the main issue should be the preventive measures, i.e., the social distancing, what we refer to as the 3 Ps, protecting ourselves, protecting your loved ones, protecting the community, hand washing, using the hand sanitizer. Look, people are talking about lockdowns. This outbreak, we have to look at it holistically. What may happen in, let's say, America cannot happen in Ghana immediately because you have to look at the context. Most of these countries graduated from a particular situation to the other. If you are not careful, you can be overzealous, and what the steps you are going to take will even create more problems for you than solving the problem. We have to look at all the risks involved. Currently, the cases we do have, we should be worried, but we shouldn't be too alarmed to take certain harsh decisions that will in the end boomerang on us. if we are able to really ensure on these preventive measures and the cases do not rise the way we all anticipate, like you indicated, you need to get to a certain stage before your health infrastructure will be overwhelmed. If you are not careful, you do the lockdown, there are other effects. We know that in places like Sierra Leone and Liberia, during the Ebola outbreak, when they did lockdowns, by the time the cases started coming up, those at home had already run out of all their essentials. And so when these donors brought food to them, instead of actually practicing the preventive measures, they actually rushed out to get food.
And they got contaminated.
And they all got contaminated. We need to be careful and mindful of all these scenarios. We know that we still have many things to do, but we must watch our steps and make
time
sure
is not
we ramp up.
So once you are,
we ramp up all the measures based on scientific and expert advice. Sometimes we may, I don't want to say we may be too alarmist in our analysis. We all know that based on certain trends, if things go in a certain direction, we may get to a situation we do not want. But we have to be careful all the steps we take. And I believe that where we are, the interventions which have been announced, you realize that anytime the president speaks, we actually scale up on certain interventions. We started with not having flight from certain countries with cases at certain levels before we go to a stage where they said, okay, when you come, you'll be quarantined. And then now we are saying no flights. So we've actually closed all our borders, even though
we actually returned the British Airways flight.
Yes, we've had cases of people assisting others to come in. So necessarily, you need to measure your steps and make sure whatever decision you take.
I understand that.
Actually,
but I'm just saying you have to balance planning for the lockdown properly and also wasting too much time for the number to increase beyond where you can't control it. Now, for example, India, they have 606 cases. 11 people have died. India has 1.3 billion people.
Yes.
They have 606 cases. It's less than 1%. They've locked down the country. India. We have 31 million people. We have 68 cases. So we have a tenth of their cases. Their population is like 20 times ours. More than 20. Yet they've locked down. So I'm just saying, every country is acting on the basis of what it considers its own self-interest quickly.
Yes.
So we will not have as much time as you are saying.
And then in the same way, because all countries have their own individual and unique dynamics, you can't necessarily just transport what occurs in one country into your country.
Of course not.
So you have to also look at the local dynamics. You realize that the way we actually interact in Ghana and even our economics, the formal and informal sector, you need to consider all these before you take certain steps. Okay. You know, most of the countries with lockdowns, they've actually given deadlines. India said they are doing it for 21 days.
South Africa the same.
South Africa the same. UK is 14 days. But the GMA request, you realize that there wasn't a timeline. They just said lockdown.
Yes, they said that,
I think all these will have to be considered. And I believe those in the midst of it are really considering some of these things.
Let me do a quick story.
We believe that at the right time, certain steps will be taken.
So when you meet the health minister tomorrow, you not recommend a lockdown?
We're going to actually interview him on that, interrogate it, and get some
answers before we make a decision.
There should be lockdown. We have to be assured of certain things. All of us are, a bit worried. We've been actually debating lockdown, no lockdown. What are the pros and cons? Okay. Within what context should we have all that? And
so,
I think we
so
have
let
to
me come to
it.
Doc. I got a message from a doctor in one of the hospitals saying that Ghanaian suppliers of the PPEs have increased the prices. And the person gave me an example. He says he received a quote for a face mask at 180 cedis a pack. On a normal day, it would have been sold for 12 to 15 cedis. Now he says, hospitals like Kolebuted 7 and Konfanochi use thousands of face masks and gloves daily. This means that a carton of face mask of 2,000 pieces, which would have originally cost between 480 to 600 cedis, is now going for 7,200 cedis. If you manage a hospital, you can't cope with this. Do you have space to buy things and pay later if you are running a hospital? If you need desperately 1,000 face masks, what degree of freedom do you have as a person running a hospital to procure them and say government should pay next month?
Okay, so I am not into administration.
Okay, you
so
are not.
I cannot give you the fine details. But
Okay.
I know some hospitals work with particular suppliers where they can have an agreement where they can be given the things and then to pay later. But generally, depending on the numbers you need, the supplier may not be able to provide all that. And the hike in the price may also affect your ability to pay back. So that is something that has to be addressed. Why people are hiking the price of sanitizers, personal protective equipment. In this situation, something must be done to clamp down on that. If we are going to, hospitals are going to be able to afford, then we have to make sure that the prices are streamlined and not hiked.
So you are asking the public to support you. I saw an advert. I'm going to put it on the screen, and then I'm going to ask you to comment on it. So I saw this on Facebook, I think. It says, donate, donate, donate. Ghana Association of Doctors in Residency, official the General Secretary. Donate to help us fight COVID-19. Fundraising in aid of PPEs for frontline health workers. What are you going to use the money for?
Okay, so we are not...
So it's on your screen. Yeah.
Yes. So we are not necessarily asking for money, but like you said, prices are high, suppliers are limited, so you may want to go in bulk to purchase from a particular supplier. But if you have the PPEs, there are some suppliers who have a lot in stock that they want to donate. We call for all those to be also donated. This is because, like he said, prices are high, facilities are not getting enough. There's a general shortage in the system. And we were waiting for supplies which have now come in, thankfully, but it's going to take a lot of time to distribute them to all the facilities and to which facility gets what. And we have been aware that not just the facilities earmarked will have need for PPEs. Everybody will have need for it. So in the interim, as a stopgap, we are not stopping. We still see patients. So we need to have them readily available and not being rationed. So that's why we are calling.
So you, the doctors,
yes.
When you get the money, you buy face masks for yourselves, you buy gloves and things.
Okay, so we are trying to buy these protective equipment to distribute to the various facilities.
Okay.
Not for our personal...
Depending on usage.
Yes.
So all the facilities would get...
All the facilities will get. We intend to start with the facilities that are earmarked, but then we've called for the facilities to let us know what their needs are, their specific needs are, so that if there's any way that we can help, then we bridge that gap so that the health care workers are able to
So put it on the screen again, *887 *2#. Please donate. I'll donate when I finish the show. *887 *2#. Until Nyama and Co are able to find out from Ministry of Health when the stuff will be distributed, we still need to donate.
Yes.
Until they have enough, and even if they have, it will never be enough. So donate *887 *2#. I'll take a short break. When I come back, I'll read your comments and take final statements from my guests. This is the point of view. Stay with us.
City TV is live on DSTV. Go to channel 363. On GoTV, access City TV on channel 182. On a digital TV, please press the menu button on the remote control and run a new search on your TV. Take note that without an antenna, you cannot access City TV on your television. City TV can be accessed on a free-to-air digital box like the GoTV and Star Times box. City TV, it's your world.
welcome back to the Point of View. Here are some of your comments. Bernard, what is the best way to apply the social distance in trotros and other transportation sectors? Please ask your guest for me. Tinkran Alexander from Medina. And good evening to Bernard and your panelists, particularly Dr. Nyama. Apart from giving so much education on COVID-19, he has provided more Veronica Bucket's advantage places in Brekum, his constituency. Kudos, Dr. Chu Nyama. I'm not for any politics. Bernard, as we were told to observe social distancing, how do some of us go to the market to do bulk purchasing and still be safe? Because I'm getting scared and my stock is running out. Stop the spread, you say. Hello, good evening. I'm Godfrey in Axim. Please, our eye itches us now and then. Must you not rub them if you have not gone out to meet people? Also, if you have not visited anywhere, shook hands or touched anything, must you wash your hands? Wash your hands every time. If your eye is itching you, give me the tissue. This is what you should do. I'll take it myself because it's not safe. Because I suspect you. If your eye is itching you, take this and do it like this. Don't use your fingers. And make sure this is not infected. So don't rub your eyes with your fingers. That's what I'm saying. Thank you for the good job you are educating us. I'm a nurse myself at a hospital in Koforidua, and the truth must be told. The PPEs to work with shouldn't be centered at regional and teaching hospitals when the mode of infection isn't centered in these facilities alone.
Definitely.
NS from Koforidua, you agree?
Yeah.
Hello guys, I think the government should put a ban on traveling within the country to prevent the virus from spreading to the other parts of the country. Alex from Takrady. Now, as for Mustafa from Osiekuse, it's my prayer that God Almighty will hear our cry and forgive our sins and deliver us from this pandemic. Now, there's a very interesting question for you, the doctors. Kwesi from Winneba, can COVID-19 be spread through yawning?
No.
Hey! Good evening, Bernard. Can you confirm the latest number for us? 93 cases and 4 deaths? No, Ernest, the number is not 93. And I'll put the number up on the screen. It's 68 with 3 deaths. I've run out of time, so I have to end the show. And so I can't even ask you any questions. I want to say a big thank you to Dr. Florence Akumia. We'll be praying for you today. We pray for doctors. You'll be fine. But you need to give them the equipment. We'll make noise for them to bring you all the things you need. But keep the good job. We really appreciate it.
More on the way. So.
Dr. Florence Akumia. Are you going to leave Parliament to go and do work? Because you're a doctor.
Yes. When it gets to...
We need you in the ward, not in the chamber.
So currently, we also working, trying to...
No, the things you are doing, go to Brekum and go and treat people. Dr. Kwabena Tumniama is actually an Odadi, he's a Presecant as well. He's a good guy. Chairman of Health Committee of Parliament, MP Brekum East. And my assistant professor, Department of Health, Policy and Management, School of Global Public Health. He's City TV's resident health economist. In the person of Nana Kofi Kwachi. Thank you for being on the show.
My pleasure.
My name is Bernard Avile. Please, give me the thing. Let me show them how it's done. You see? It's very important. Don't touch your eyes. And tonight, before you go to bed, pray. God will protect us. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.